you so much. I'm really happy to be here and see this sold out crowd. Very, very exciting to see a big crowd. You know, a lot of times I give this lecture to students at Lawrence Tech and they're like, ugh, they just don't want to be there. But I know you came out on a miserable night. You're interested in being here and I really appreciate that. So thanks again for coming out today. I want to give a little bit of background on the presentation because I didn't create the presentation. It was really done by the Art Deco Society members. And these people were just volunteers. The Deco Society decided that we needed to have a survey of all of the Art Deco architecture in our metropolitan area. So we took a map of the metro area and kind of divided it up, and different volunteers went out to different areas. So somebody did downriver, somebody did Grosse Pointe. So you'll be able to tell that, except in the beginning, that it's volunteers. You know, you'll see a thumb in the slide. You'll see that it's like volunteers took these slides. But it really came together in the end, and it's really thanks to them that this has happened. So at every lecture, I always read their names because it's really because of them. And you might know those people. You might know them. So that's Audra Bartley, Mel Batch, Jacques Cossan, Dan Drotar, Ann Duke, Janice Milham, Gary Spondike, and Dennis Stanhart. So a lot of times they sometimes took a slide, and I know that's in the case of Grosse Pointe, they sometimes took a slide that did not come out so good, and I had to take it out of the presentation. You know, say there was a lot of trees in the way, and you couldn't really see. So sometimes you might think of a building, and it's not in here. That just means I need to go out and reshoot it. I probably know about it, but you know, you can always bring it up and maybe I didn't know about it, but the likelihood is that the slide didn't come out. But anyway, that's just generally the way this was put together. So that's the background of it. When I give this presentation to students, we always talk about what is Art Deco, and we talk about the style. So a little bit of history. In this country, we generally say that Art Deco was from the years of 1925 to 1945. Now that's not saying that not all architecture produced at that time was not in that style. It's really the style that if we were standing in 1929 looking up at the Guardian building, you would say that that building was done in a modern style. It was done in a modern style. The words Art Deco really did not come about until 1966 when there was a book written by a British author, and that's when that term came about. So the origins of the style have to do with an exposition in Paris in 1925, and so that really kind of was this dramatic new style that was really given its big start in Paris, and then came over to the United States. And in the United States, we took it, mixed it with other things, kind of incorporated it in our own way. Then the style evolved. It evolved into Art Moderne. It evolved into Streamline. And I take this presentation and I incorporate all of those styles, those three styles, into this one presentation. So I'll describe when there's something that's streamlined and something Art Moderne. So, I'm not a purist where I just took one category. We really combined those three things into one presentation here. We have in this country, we have a Miami Beach Art Deco style. We have a zigzag Art Deco style. We have a skyscraper Art Deco style. So while this was a European style, if you went to Europe, it was a high style and you'd have a very narrow definition. Here we use it very, very broadly. And also, I have to say, the best way to explain it is when you see the pictures. My 6-year-old niece was just asking me about this, and I had to explain it to the 6-year-old, and without a picture, it's really very difficult to describe. So by the end of this presentation, I know you'll get it, and it's something you have to see to really understand. So the way this presentation is organized is we took all of those slides that all the volunteers took and organized them into categories. So we start out with our most significant Art Deco buildings. So we start out with, the Fisher Building, the Guardian Building, and those really monumental, significant buildings. And then I talk about the materials that were used in Art Deco buildings. So there's a section where we talk about the materials. Then we go on to other subjects. So, for example, residential architecture, movie theaters, industrial architecture, and so that's how it's been divided up into those different categories. So you'll see how this all works and fits together. So it's about 1 hour long. It seems like no matter how fast I talk, it's always 1 hour long. So yeah, set your watch, we'll be done in 1 hour, and I'll take some questions at the end too. So, okay, we can get started, and if someone's gonna hit the lights for me? I think it'd be better if the lights were dimmed. Yeah. Well, this is the Fisher Building, really Detroit's monumental and really our best building, I have to say, our best building, Fisher Building. And 28 stories tall, designed by Albert Kahn, of course, and built in 1928, coincidentally. Now, it looks much taller than 28 stories, and I really think that has to do with Albert Kahn's understanding of proportions, and you know, his really looking toward the skyscraper style. Now, what I wanted to show you right here is this building. That's the General Motors building, which he designed in 1920, right across the street. Now, the General Motors building is a sort of collection of rectangles assembled together to create office space. But 8 years later, Albert Kahn was building this skyscraper with these setbacks. And that's really what created the setback and skyscraper style here for the Fisher Building. Okay, all right, here's Albert Kahn, hard at work. You guys are all Detroiters and you're not students, I don't need to explain about Albert Kahn. Okay, here's a picture of the Fisher Building, and I always like to point out the fact that right here where this surface parking lot is, the original designs were to have a 60-story skyscraper go up on that site. Now, the drawings exist, but of course that was never built. But, I mean, we still have this incredible monumental building. They told Albert Kahn he could spend whatever he wanted. He had an unlimited budget. And so this building is clad in marble exterior, and of course it's just phenomenal. Well, here's a shot of the interior, the grand lobby. Yeah. No, you won't. And here's the ceiling. So I want to describe a little bit about the Art Deco style. The Art Deco style is about taking things and not representing them exactly as they are, not representing them in entire realism, but they've stylized. So these are bunches of oranges, and they've added some geometric shapes. The artist here was named Geza Marotti. Mr. Marotti was Hungarian and came here to work at Cranbrook, but did the stencil work here at the Fisher Building. So that's one thing I want you to notice, with all the pattern work and this sort of stylized patterns applied. Well, here's our other most significant building, of course, the Union Guardian Trust Building. That's what its name was in 1929 when it opened. The architect's name was Wirt Rowland, and he was working for Smith, Henchman & Grills at the time. It's 40 stories tall. Really is a spectacular skyscraper. This building is a National Historic Landmark. One thing to notice, this is an old picture from about 50 years ago, but one thing to notice is that the exterior is clad in brick. So I pointed out that the Fisher Building was clad in marble, but this building utilized brick, and that was so he was able to put more of the budget on the interior of the building. Well, I'm going to go quickly. Here's a shot of the entrance to the Guardian Building. The reliefs on the exterior right here are safety and security, guarding the bank, right? They were done by Detroit sculptor Corrado Parducci. Mr. Parducci worked in Detroit his entire career and worked on basically every building in Detroit downtown. And, well, these are wonderful kind of, again, stylized, where they're a little bit severe-looking men. They're not exactly how people look. They're kind of stylized. And then we've got this wonderful semicircular dome at the entrance. This is Pewabic pottery tile, and there's a lot of symbolism here with these figures inside of it. But Mary Chase Perry Stratton of Pewabic worked directly with the architect to put this beautiful tile work together. Now, one thing I want you to notice here is the stepped arch. And the stepped arch that's right here at the entranceway is repeated on the interior of the building as well. So here's a kind of dark shot of that lobby. Now, the beautiful tiled ceiling inside the Guardian Building was done by Rookwood Pottery of Cincinnati. That's basically because our Wyoming pottery in Detroit did not have the capacity to produce this large of a commission. So, of course, in the 1980s, when this was being restored, Wyoming did create tiles for the restoration, but this, really is just one of the most incredible interiors. And I think if you went to any book on Art Deco architecture, you will find this building in it. It really is something I think we take for granted in Detroit because it's just always been occupied. It's never been endangered, but it really is an outstanding example of Art Deco. Okay, here's another shot of the elevator lobbies. Again, there's that stepped arch and that pattern. Wonderful stained glass. One time I was giving a tour of this building and I met a man who worked as a contractor who actually, in the 1960s, I guess it was, covered up that stained glass. That was when the government owned the building. So anyway, yeah, Macomb restored it in the 1980s and really just did a terrific job. The owners today are still doing some restoration work. Wonderful mosaic here. This is a very beautiful, detailed mosaic. If you went up to it, you'd see all the little individual pieces of glass. And this was executed by an artist named Ezra Winter. He also did the large mural in the building as well. He was a Michigan artist who went on to work in New York City at Rockefeller Center. Well, I could give you a tour for 1 hour of the Guardian building, but I'm not going to do that today, and we're going to keep talking here. The Penobscot building's right across the street on Griswold. Same architect, Wirt Rowland, Smith Hedgeman Groves. So the Penobscot building is 47 stories tall, and this, again, is a really spectacular skyscraper deco setback skyscraper style. Now, when this building was built, this was really very strikingly modern, very, very contemporary, and 1928. And so you have to think about it, that this was our sort of image-defining skyscraper and our tallest building in the city of Detroit until the Renaissance Center was built in 1977. So this really was an important structure for us in Detroit. Here's a close-up of some of the detail on the Penobscot building. So I mentioned zigzag, and zigzag was a pattern that was used quite frequently on Art Deco buildings. There's a Native American here because the Penobscot is a Native American tribe, actually in Maine. And of course there's a swastika on here because of all the Nazis that, no. Tricking you, I joked you. No, that's a Native American symbol that, of course they're not. Just joking. Okay. This building's been cleaned since this slide was taken too. There's been a really wonderful restoration that was done. Well, we just walked up Griswold another block to the David Stott building, 1929, and the architects were Donaldson and Meyer. So this is another wonderful skyscraper in Detroit that perhaps we take for granted as well. So again, there's setbacks here, terrific Art Deco design. Let me get another closer shot of the David Stott building. So terrific Deco skyscrapers downtown. Okay, here we're going up to the new center area, to the Albert Kahn building. This is where Albert Kahn's offices were. And of course, some of you might remember going to Saks Fifth Avenue down here. Okay, yeah, so they remember that. Now the building isn't so much Art Deco in form, in the exterior, but really in this lobby interior, it truly is. So you've got this wonderful kind of sense of motion to this lobby, where the ceiling and this flooring are kind of giving this feeling of speed almost, and something's racing through this lobby. It's just incredible, incredible work here. Here's some of the detail on the just the radiator grill. Is this heavy brass with these stylized lotus leaves. Ooh, this is sort of sticky. Really, maybe it's because of all the. I wonder what's the trick.
There we go.
Okay. I'll try and keep my hand right here. Okay. We're in Mount Clemens at the Macomb County Building. The Macomb County Building is designed by George Haas. And, you know, they could have built a really long, wide building out there. When that building was built, there was lots of space, but instead they wanted to represent Macomb County as being very contemporary, and they built this in the skyscraper style. So, wonderful details of some representations of military figures at the top, and they say it was in relation to Selfridge being close by. So that's in the Macomb County Building. Okay, I found the right spot. I'm not going to move my arm. Okay. Here we are at the Broadhead Armory. So you say, what's so special about that building? What's so great about that? Maybe it's not so great on the outside, but this has Michigan's largest collection of WPA artwork on the inside of it. The building was designed in 1930 by William Buck Stratton, and it, of course, was originally the Detroit Naval Armory, and the military was there up until 2 years ago. The military left, and the building reverted to the city of Detroit. But here's what's inside. These are frescoes that are on the wall. It's plaster, so it can't come off. It's not going to be transported to Grosse Pointe. No, take it off. It's in there. This is by David Fredenhall, who was an artist who studied at Cranbrook, then went on to work for Life magazine, very well known. And then this was by an artist named Gustav Hildebrand. He carved sailors and a lot of kind of military themes in the walls. This is by an artist named John Tabachuk, who did a lot of wood carving in the building. This banister goes on and on and on through that building. So this was all paid for by the WPA in the 1930s. Here's another shot of it, yeah. Yeah, so this building was in the paper about 6 weeks ago because all of the copper plumbing was stolen out. Okay. So, oops, I can't move my arm. So anyway, I'm on another topic. We're going to change the subject. We're going to talk about the materials that were used in Art Deco architecture. This is an example of porcelain enameled steel panels. So porcelain enameled steel, you all have an example of that in your house, and that's on your refrigerator. So that's where, in fact, Detroit was a large producer of these porcelain enameled steel panels. So you can see right here. And of course, we've got this wonderful running bond on this building, and glass block was used quite a bit in Art Deco. The Temple Bar is located near Masonic Temple on 2nd Avenue, and I'd say, take my advice and don't go there. Okay, brick. Brick has been around since the beginning of time, right? It's always been there, but here it's used in an Art Deco style in this building on the east side. So we've got these, wonderful brick pattern work at the very top of this building.
What street's in that? Jefferson?
Okay, she wants to know what street that's on.
Got more detail than that. I don't know.
Looks like we've changed.
14,000.
You're right, Jefferson. You got it.
Jefferson.
I don't have the where on Jefferson.
What's 14242?
Yeah, there's the address.
Alter Road.
Yeah.
I've seen that. Yeah, I've seen it.
Okay, the next material I want to talk about is Vitrolite. It's also called Carrara glass, 2 names. And this was a product that was produced to update storefronts so that they have this streamlined and very contemporary look. So you can see these panels were placed over masonry, and it was used quite frequently for wonderful effect. But the problem was it broke, right? And so it was used for about 30 years, and then people decided, this material breaks, let's not use it anymore. It really kind of went out of style. But Vitrolite. Okay, we're not looking at the Popeyes, no. Beautiful terracotta. So we've got lots of examples of great terracotta in Detroit. This is beautiful multicolored terracotta, Woodward and Milwaukee. Oh, I moved my hand. This is not such a good slide, but it's white glazed terracotta. This building's on Gratiot and Mack. It's called the Shell Building. Really great Art Deco building, and I need to get some some better slides of that one. Okay, this is the Shaffer Building in Dearborn on Shaffer and Michigan. And I really recommend you guys all look at the Shaffer Building, a good example of terracotta. Okay, porcelain, we're not looking at the hot dog, no. Sometimes you gotta get all the junk and look up, and then there's great, patterned porcelain enameled steel. Okay, limestone. So limestone has faced buildings for decades and centuries, right? But here's a building on Jefferson you probably have seen many, many times going downtown. It's close to downtown. So a wonderful stepped arch over this building, which was formerly a Willans typesetting and printing company. Oh, I moved my hand. This building is on Woodward in Brush Park on the east side of Woodward Avenue. And so this is something called cast stone. And this is kind of a little bit of a story here. This plaque right here is a design called the Frozen Fountain. And the Frozen Fountain was introduced in that exposition in 1925 in Paris. And if you went to Miami Beach or Los Angeles, you'd see quite a number of buildings with that Frozen Fountain design on it. But this is our only example of it on the outside of a building in Detroit. This building's kind of really in bad condition too. So it's an endangered Frozen Fountain. But yeah, that's a wonderful Art Deco exterior.
You can thaw at any time.
Okay, that was a discussion about the materials that were used. So the next topic, okay, I've divided this into categories. So I'm going to talk about some buildings. Here's maybe a food category, food. So Red Naps is out in Rochester, Michigan, on Rochester Road. So this is a wonderful use of Carrara glass and very much still with its same use. So this is a terrific example. And the owners have restored this exterior too. Okay, so the Elwood is a great example. This has a porcelain enameled steel exterior. And the owner, Chuck Forbes, has really saved this building twice. He saved it in the 1980s when it was on Woodward Avenue and it had really deteriorated and gotten really, run down and closed, and he restored it. He had it put on the National Register of Historic Places. The architect's name is Charles Noble. But then, of course, it was in the way of the stadium project. So he negotiated with the city and he moved the building on his own. He moved it to this location. So I hope it's doing well because he saved it twice. Okay, this building's in Southwest Detroit, and maybe I just like the lettering. Yeah, Deco lettering. And this is in Oak Park, little diner there in Oak Park. And I'm not sure what the original color was, but very cute little example of roadside architecture. So the idea here is it's, streamlined, very kind of curved corner, made for when you're driving and you notice this building. Okay, another topic is industrial architecture. Of course, in Detroit we have lots of industrial architecture. This building is in Hazel Park on John R. and Evelyn Street. And what I want to point out here is next to it is just, basic rectangle warehouse building. But this building here has a sense of style to it. It's got this curved, rounded corner, kind of this, that sense of motion, and that idea of something being streamlined again, where there's this feeling of, it's got style, right? It's got a sense of style to this building. So there's lots of examples of that around Detroit. Here's a little just what was a corner grocery store. So this is a terrific example where this corner streamlining was used. There's contrasting colors with the porcelain enameled steel, and it's just really an eye-catching design made for someone when you're driving, right? Someone was driving and stopped and saw this building, and it really stood out. This little building is the Mellis Newspaper Building in Lincoln Park. I include that because of my friend in Lincoln Park who's trying to save it. But, okay, here we are on Grinnell Street in Detroit. So Grinnell Street has this sort of collection of industrial buildings that there's this sort of collection of Art Deco fronts to them. So in the back is this, very basic factory behind all of these. But in the front, they've all got this office structure that's this very wonderful streamlined design, Art Moderne. So what this told you was that this company, in say 1932, was a very contemporary, up-to-date parts maker. Say they made, chrome parts like some of these made, and that they would, provide Chevrolet with some very contemporary, stylish detailing. So we've got this whole collection here on Grinnell Street. There's another one of them. It's sort of like the Miami Beach of industrial architecture. Here's one. Some of them are, not being used anymore. Some of them are sort of. Some of them are in such great shape. And then there's a building here in Highland Park. So that's some examples of our industrial architecture. So that's something to keep an eye out for. Okay. Yeah. The next topic is communications. And communications, when you think about the telephone and the radio, those are things that were very high tech in the 1920s and 30s. That was very, the high tech industry of the day. So they used the high style, the most contemporary style of the day. This building is downriver in Riverview, Michigan, and this is the Wwj transmitter. So you can see this radio transmitter tower right here, right? And then this is the little, mechanical structure in front of it. It was designed by the architect Cyril Edward Schley. Now, Mr. Schley worked for C. Howard Crane. He had been a theater architect. And it was designed in 1934. So it's always had the same use. No one's ever come along and decided to change things. And so it's really this perfect little example here, downriver. Got another close-up of the front entrance. So these are representations of columns in the front, almost Egyptian, almost really Egyptian pilasters there. Okay, this is the Wwj Broadcast Station originally. It's on West Lafayette. This was designed by Albert Kahn in 1936, and this was Michigan's first TV station. So really this building kind of has that idea of a pilaster and a very kind of classical theme right to the very front facade of the building. Do you remember the George Perot show? Yeah. So this is where that was filmed, and you could, broadcast from, and a lot of television shows were done here, where you could come and watch them being done from this spot. And this building's still occupied. And the front of that building, right under at the side of each entrance, are two plaques that were done by Carl Millis, who was a sculptor who's from Cranbrook as well. This is an audience. On the other side is the audience, the musicians, so they're like listening to music. And you can see it's got a pigeon problem here, and it's sort of not being taken care of. I think it needs to be appreciated.
Where's the building located?
West Lafayette, about 2nd Avenue.
Downtown. Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Oh, I've got the same problem. Here's the Wwj transmitter. So this one is out on 8 Mile. So if you can picture out on 8 Mile, it's kind of very prominent. So again, you can see the transmitter towers, and this beautiful little mechanical building, again, very symmetrical. So, really exactly what was on one half is on the other. Wonderful detail and design there. This building I need to get a better slide of. This was today it's DTE Energy. At the time, it would have been the Michigan or energy company, Consumers Power Building. But it's got some great Art Deco detailing on it. This is on the west side at I-96 and Grand River. Of course, everybody at Grosse Pointe knows where this is. Sometimes I give this presentation, nobody knows where this is, but you guys all know where this building is. Right, so remember I was talking about how the telephone systems were, very contemporary kind of endeavor, and so they used a contemporary style of architecture and this building, as you know, has very few people working in it. It's mostly filled with machinery. That's part of their, that switching station. So it's a terrific example of Art Deco. Okay, next topic. Retail. We've got a few retail buildings to show you. This is downtown on State Street, right next to the David Stott Building. This was originally the Colonial Department Store, and so it's just mostly at the top, great Art Deco design. This building's been vacant for quite a while. And then here, this is right on Broadway, across from the Detroit Opera House. And so here's a building that was done in about 1911, okay, it's terracotta. But in the 1930s, the Simmons and Clark Company put in this wonderful Vitrolite storefront in the Art Deco style. And the owners, you know, they had the same owners for years and years and decades. And when they were demolishing the Madison Theater here, some of this got damaged. And the owners, you know, they could have put in a totally new storefront and done anything, but they really decided they wanted to restore their original storefront there. So I was able to connect them with a supplier that still has a stockpile of the Vitrolite, and so they were able to do a really wonderful restoration. Okay, you know, this can be removed, right? And we still have this very kind of contrasting color building. Okay, next subject. That was retail. Let's see what the next subject is. Oh, religious. So this building is on Woodward and 12 Mile. It's the National Shrine of the Little Flower Church. The architect's name was Henry McGill. He was from New York City, and he was brought here. Now I think we kind of also take this building for granted because it's been here for so long and always, you know, been well occupied. But a wonderful example. And Art Deco churches are not that common. They are not very common at all. So the sculptor's name is Rene Paul Chambellan. But anyway, I want you to notice that stepped arch, which is something I pointed out earlier. So we do have this wonderful Art Deco church here at the National Shrine. So we do have some other religious architecture examples. Unity Temple is in Palmer Park, 6 Mile and Woodward area. And the building here really is more in the international style. It's very kind of boxy feeling. But I want you to notice this front entrance to it is really, again, that very symmetrical feeling with these classical designs and details. So Unity Temple, great example. And then there's this Whitechapel Cemetery. Got some wonderful Art Deco reliefs and stylized designs to it. Okay, so that was religious architecture. Post offices. We have a couple post office examples. This is the post office in Hamtramck. It was a WPA project. The architect was Louis Simon. And so there's these kind of representations of columns going down the front here. And so the post office had some kind of very, you know, reminiscent of classical details. And the inside of the Hamtramck post office, towards the ceiling, these are very large, like 3-foot-tall vents at the top of the ceiling. And did you know that it's illegal to take pictures in the post office? You find that out when you're doing that.
Illegal to take pictures in post office.
So here in Highland Park, we've got really more in the international style. Again, a very boxy building, but again, that idea of columns going down the front. And this was a Michigan-based sculptor. I'm forgetting the name. I forgot to bring his name, but okay. Okay, so that was post offices. We've got a couple more topics. Clinics. So clinics, of course, wanted to be seen as clean and contemporary and be seen as very, high tech. So they used the Art Deco style. This building is in Hamtramck as well. Almost sort of cubist in form in a lot of ways. And it's a great example. It perhaps maybe, it's got this sort of rounded, streamlined addition to it, but it's terrific. And today it's a mosque. So, this building is on Woodward and 7 Mile, and this is on the east side of the street. This is really something in the Miami Beach style, where you've got this wonderful stucco exterior, running bands going around the building, and corner casement windows. This was all used in that Miami Beach style of architecture. Very pretty. And in downtown Detroit, the Salvation Army building on Bagley and Cass. this is our only existing cast concrete building in Detroit. Our only cast concrete building. It was designed by Talmadge Hughes. He was a Detroit architect. And the apartments here are two-story apartments. They're wonderful. There's a roof garden on the top. And I have to think, if you were living here in, I think it was 1937, you were very hip. If you were living in this building in 1937. But it's, always been occupied, this building in Palmer Park. So it's located on Whitmore. And right here in Whitmore is this whole sort of Art Deco apartment row. The Deco Society had tours of this area for a couple of years. These were designed by the architect Robert West. So very symmetrical buildings. I love the cantilevered overhang there. And here you've got this sort of emphasis of the vertical. Well, that's where the staircase is as you walk through. And you've got the glass block lighting up that staircase. And, brick and horizontal brickwork. The town apartments are downtown on First and Bagley, yeah. So that's great building that used to have more detail on it. The story is it was designed by Wirt Rowland of Smith Henchman Grills, and it was designed for the Pontchartrain Club, private club, and the Depression hit. So that club never really made it. They didn't really become a successful club. And the building survived with retail just around the first floor. And then in the 1960s, apartments were built in the upper floors. So it's been an apartment building since the 1960s, and it's been successful since that time. Yeah, it's been doing well. Okay, so we're going to talk about single-family homes and residential architecture. This one is in Dearborn Heights, right by the Rouge River. This is a great example of that Miami Beach style, again, where it's a stucco exterior, and you've got these wonderful smooth corners, rounded corners. And I like that the owner has planted yucca plants in the front to give it that tropical look, right? He's a member of the Deco Society. So this building is on, you probably know, Whittier and that Outer Drive and Chandler Park Drive, kind of weird intersection, right? So that's, a lot of times has blue tarps all over it, right? So they've been working on this for years, this building, but you can see in this picture the damage that was going on. But what I really want to show you is the kind of how these buildings stand out from the basic brick bungalows around them, and how they really are, these gems of architecture that really stand out. Here's one in Grosse Pointe. This is by the architect, pardon?
It's on Pemberton.
Oh, it's on Pemberton, she said. Okay. So this is by the architect Lyle Zisler. And this is an example of nautical deco. So what I mean here is there's this sort of ship's railing, porthole windows, and you got this little door, so you sort of feel like you're on a cruise ship, right? So that's the whole idea of this little, this house. You've kind of got that nautical art deco combination. Well, this I've added here. This building, this house was done in 1938. 1938, it looks like it's much later, like 20 or 30 years later, but it's by the architect Alden Dow. And, this really is of the style of what Walter Gropius and Marcel Breuer were doing in Europe, but Alden Dow was very much ahead of his time, and so we've got this, really more in the international style, but I included it here because it was just so progressive for its time. You guys all know this house because it's an important landmark. Okay, this one is in Dearborn on Oakman Boulevard. It's owned by a member of the Deco Society, and she actually had a paint analysis done to find out the original color of the house. So she found that the yellow was the original color, and she went through a lot of trouble to get contractors to, not screw up the outside, but really do this wonderful, stucco work and then paint. What I love is how this railing kind of re-echoes the bay of the window below it. The architect of her home is Arthur L. Weeks. This house is in Detroit. Again, it's got some of that nautical deco feeling. And I like how there's original windows too, original stucco. Yeah. Okay, this one's in Grosse Pointe. So here's my joke I always tell. So before it was painted Grosse Pointe taupe, probably white, it probably had that railing, and it probably had corner casement windows there. Somebody kind of changed it, right? Yeah, I don't remember the street. I didn't take the Grosse Pointe.
It's on Harvard.
Harvard.
Okay, so this house is not Art Deco in style, not at all, not at all. But I included in this, in this presentation just because I really like the concept, and I don't know, I just like talking about this. This is an example of the Lustron House, and the Lustron House was what was part of the solution to the post-World War II housing shortage. So the idea was to have this mass-produced housing that could be assembled. These were all built on a slab, there's no basement, and these are all steel houses. They were advertised as, never needs paint, and it's a steel roof, steel casement windows, steel everything on the interior as well. And so there were 5 here on the street in Oak Park, and there were 2 in the city of Detroit. One on the west side was very controversial. There were uprisings against it. They had to put brick on the outside of it. So, yeah. Then there's another one actually very close to here on Lakeland Street in Detroit. Oh, you have something?
There's a couple in Ann Arbor too.
And there's some in Ann Arbor? Okay. So there were about 3,800 of these built total in the United States. Then the company had a kind of controversy. They had a problem with the government loan, and there was a major issue, and the company folded. About half of those 3,000 houses exist today. So they're just, this great little example of innovation and technology. And anyway, it's porcelain enameled steel on the inside as well. You can see she uses a lot of magnets.
Oh, that's cute.
Be easy to.
I love that.
Okay, so that was them talking about houses. So I'm going to talk about schools and educational buildings. Just for a minute. Pershing High School in Detroit. You can see wonderful zigzag patterns here down in Pershing. I think I just printed the wrong way. Deco patterns on the outside of Pershing. Oh, here's the Rackham Memorial Building. I always felt that this building's problem was it was just sited in the wrong way. So if it had just been turned to face Woodward Avenue, we'd all be appreciating it a lot more. But it's facing Farnsworth, facing the DIA there. So this was designed by Harley, Ellington, and Day, and it was built for the Detroit Engineering Society. And wonderful, wonderful Art Deco building, and these plaques at the top at the capitals of these pilasters are done by Marshall Fredericks, the famous Detroit sculptor. So we've really got this wonderful gem. It's kind of difficult to shoot because of the way the light comes, and it's so light. A lot of times my slides just don't come out very well, but we all need to appreciate the Rackham. Okay, and then at Cranbrook, of course, Cranbrook and Eliel Saarinen was the designer of the peristyle here at Cranbrook, and it really had his own Finnish kind of Art Deco combination, where he took the idea of the Roman peristyle, added his own kind of Finnish interpretation, and his architecture was really, like no one else's. People sometimes ask me, what is that thing? There was of course, the day I went out, there was some kind of weird student exhibit going on. But here's an example of, again, Mr. Saarinen's design was very much one-of-a-kind artwork that was uniquely his. Nothing like anyone else. Well, here's a high school gymnasium that's in Detroit, and I think what I just really liked about this little gymnasium edition were these plaques that show the different sports that were going on the inside that keep designs. Okay, so those were educational buildings. Oh, okay. So, okay, good. I like it when people know this building and try to Has anybody here ever been to the Vanity Ballroom? Oh, so I like it when I hear a presentation and people say they've been there. That's another rare day for me that people say they've been there. Well, this is one of my, okay, this is my favorite building in Detroit.
Oh.
So the Vanity Ballroom was built in 1929 by Charles Avery. And the building was, this terrific idea of retail on the first floor. There was a Cunningham drugstore here, and there was a dress shop here, men's clothing store, jewelry store. And then when you took the streetcar, you got off and you walked down to here, and that's where you got in and went to the ballroom on the second floor, was the ballroom. The style of it was where Mr. Avery really kind of combined the Art Deco with the Mayan and Mexican, really, the kind of idea of the archaeology that was being excavated at that time. So he has these inverted chevrons and this stepped arch that we mentioned before, and then this frieze of jaguars. That's what they're supposed to be representing, jaguars running around the top of the building. So this building's been vacant for a long time, and I'm very worried about it.
Ooh.
Yeah. So this blue is not original, but this is where you went up to pay your 10 cents to go hear a band, right? And these designs and face patterns here, these were right out of the books of what was being excavated at Chichen Itza and in Guatemala and all of these places. And so Mr. Avery just sort of took these things and kind of applied them here in this wonderful ballroom. Now it's a 5,000 square foot dance floor inside the Vanity Ballroom. And every time I took a picture in there, it never came out. So I've just got slides of some of the details that are inside of it. There's a sconce and some of those things. So I'm gonna have to find a vintage picture of the ballroom and somehow get a slide of that picture. So that's one of the ceiling plaques. Yeah, so we have to hope all that's still there. Liquor Lotto. And so this is on McNichols in Detroit. So what I want you to do, she's going, why are we looking at that? Look at there. That's right. So up there is what's at the top is this wonderful Mexican, Mexican really themed structure that, again, terrific stuff applied to a really kind of typical commercial building in Detroit. Okay, we've got theater subject. This is the Senate Theater on Michigan Avenue. Today it's owned by the Michigan Theater Organ Society, and they have the Fisher Theater organ there, and they have organ concerts on occasion. But this is an example of roadside architecture where the sign is part of the building. The Majestic Theater on Woodward. This is an unusual story where on Woodward Avenue in the 1930s, Woodward was widened. And so they literally sliced the front off of a 1915 C. Howard Crane Theater, and Bennett and Straight was the name of the architectural firm that put this Art Deco facade on here. Now, Mr. Zania, the owner of the Majestic, has been restoring it. It does not look this junky down here now. It looks really much nicer today. So
That's the restaurant in Bowling Alley?
that's right. A very nice restaurant there. And so the Civic Theater on Kelly Road on the east side, it does not look this nice anymore. But it's still standing, and that picture was probably taken we started this survey about 9 years ago. So, the Hartford Theater, so that was by Charles Avery as well, and so again, that idea of roadside architecture and that colossal marquee. And the good thing is that building, it's still being used. That nightclub is still popular. So the Berkeley Theater is a good example of, partial preservation. Single screen theaters really cannot survive in today's theater world and movie world. They just cannot make money. So the city of Berkeley and their historical society negotiated with the owners and the drugstore that at the time was Rite Aid. And so the city of Berkeley maintains the marquee, and they use this sign for their city events. And they realized that this marquee was the only thing that really designated Berkeley and made Berkeley look any different than Huntington Woods or Royal Oak or those other suburbs surrounding it. So they really, kept this marquee. So even though that's a Rite Aid today, it's part of their downtown. So, and they're very proud of that fact. So they've kept that thing, even though it's not a theater anymore. So you can see it's there on their little signs. Yeah. Okay, this theater was the Telenews Theater. It was built in 1942 by Cyril Edward Schley. This used to have a big globe at the top. And so that big globe would tell, the average person that it showed world news. Of course, it wasn't these colors originally, and it was the Telenews where you'd see newsreels. And then it had different names of different kinds of karate movies, and it had, many iterations over the years. But then it was vacant for probably 8 years. In 2000, it was converted to this techno music nightclub. And if you were standing here on Saturday night at about 11:30, this would be packed with teenagers. This would just be packed. And for a nightclub to still be popular, 6 years later, with that amount of crowds is quite the accomplishment. So, Blue is still going, amazingly enough. Okay, the people in Lincoln Park hate this building. They hate this building, but I have to think that, the building could still be reused for something else. It still could have another life. Down in Plymouth, Michigan, Plymouth is the Penn Theater, and the story here is that a nonprofit group was formed when this building was threatened. So the nonprofit group was able to purchase this theater, and they're restoring it and actually showing second run, kind of Disney movies and very much family entertainment there now. So this is a real success story where the community got organized, fundraised, and has restored that theater. Well, the Fort Wyoming Drive-In is still going. It's got about 6 screens of drive-in movie theaters. And this is our last remaining drive-in theater in the metropolitan area. It's the last one. So it's open every day of the year. It's got about 6 screens around it now, but it's still going, which is a rare and unusual thing. So very Art Deco in design, symmetrical with this sort of this Deco rule of 3s with these 3 things on each side. I think it's a terrific example. Okay, so we've got another topic, which we're almost done. We're almost at the end. Yeah, and it's a sad topic. You heard them say, "Oh, this is sad." This was the demolished topic. This is things that were demolished. So this was at 15 Mile and Gratiot. This was the March Mobile gas station. And the same family had this gas station for a long time, and the parents finally died, and then the children decided to sell. So it's, it's gone. There's a liquor store there, and what we lost was a Frederick Frost designed drum-style mobile gas station. Very few were left.
What's the outside material, that porcelain steel?
That's right. Yeah. Oh, see, these slides are sticking on me. I got sticky slides. Okay, Sears Building in Highland Park was our other cast concrete building. This was by the firm of Nimmons, Wright and Carr, built in 1943, and Sears department store. Well, in Miami Beach, they took their old Sears department store and made it, this terrific performing arts center. Of course, the Miami Beach. And of course, they were able to reuse their Art Deco department store. But it's, kind of a sad story that we lost this. But the frustrating thing is nothing has replaced it. It's just a vacant, empty lot there. Nothing replaced it at all. It's just demolished. This is just sort of a quick example of what not to do. This building's right across the street from the old Tiger Stadium on Trumbull. So we've got this great exterior, right? And then they painted it brown. Okay, the Mercury Theater was on 6 Mile and Shaffer. It was designed by Ted Rodvoy, and theater architect and Detroit-based architect. So this was a big single-screen theater that had I think over 1,000 seats. It was very large, and the had sort of a theme inside. It had a theme of like the zodiac and really very interesting, one of a kind, unique theater. Another slide of the doesn't want to come down. Slide of the Mercury, but here is what's there today. Yeah, it's very sad. And this is what's called homogeneous chain store architecture. That's what it's called. And you could be in Gainesville, Florida. You could be in San Jose, California, because it all looks the same, right? This is all the same stuff, everywhere you go. So what we lost was a unique, one-of-a-kind building, right? There are no other Mercury Theaters, and we've got this. So just in case you think I drove to Sterling Heights to take that picture, there's this theater.
I never took the sides out.
The Kego Theater was demolished for a Rite Aid, so the Kego Harbor is out near Pontiac. And sometimes buildings are just demolished by neglect. So this one was on Michigan Avenue, and yeah, so it ends on a bummer. The slideshow kind of ends on a bummer. It's a fast slide at the end. But I think in the end we realized, that we do have a significant collection of Art Deco architecture, right? We put it all together, and we've got a terrific collection here in Detroit. So thank you very much, and if you have any questions. Any questions? Yeah.
Would you consider the Maccabees building to be an Art Deco building?
No, the Maccabees really was a neo-Gothic design that did not have enough deco to cut it. Nope. Do you have a question? Yeah.
Plaza Hotel at West Grand Boulevard.
A hotel at West Grand Boulevard. Lee Plaza. Okay, thanks, Lee
By
Plaza.
Northwestern.
Okay, the Lee Plaza also was more, I guess I'd call that eclectic architecture. That took a lot of styles and kind of mixed them together, Mediterranean and a lot of different things, but not deco, no. Yeah, Lee Plaza's not in good shape today. Yeah.
How about the King apartment building in Jefferson?
Okay, good one, King. I like the King a lot. That's really a good idea of deco combined with eclectic as well. It's kind of borderline. Is it deco? Is it eclectic? It's like, yeah, I guess I could say. All right, yeah. Okay, you had one? Yeah.
When we saw those plaza breakdowns, right, the homes always around, what kind of rooms were behind it? So living room?
Yeah, in most cases it was the living room, right, with that glass block bay window. It's usually the living room. Okay, we'll do one more question. Okay, you have one, yeah.
Would you be interested in some other houses that are really beautiful deco for your collection?
Oh, would I be interested? Yeah, if you could come up and tell me about those addresses, yeah, because it's probably a case of, like I said, we had a bad slide.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So, a lot of times it was just trees. So, thanks. Yeah, if you guys can think of something I'm missing, I'd appreciate that. But thanks for coming out tonight. I really appreciate it.